So today in this lecture, first of all, we'll see what are the ingredients of a written statement, shortly known as WS. And these ingredients you will find in order 8 of CPC. You see, there are mainly 7 parts of a written statement. The first part relates to heading of the WS, which is equivalent to the heading of plaint, like name of the court, suit number, name of the parties. So that heading is equivalent to the plaint. You write down first of all the name of the court, then suit number. Here suit number is mentioned as 345 of 2017. Dear students, this suit number was missing in plaint because at the time of filing of the plaint, you were not aware about the suit number. But now since the case has been instituted, copy of the plaint along with summon has been given to the defendant and the case number is already mentioned on the plaint, copy of the plaint. So now you have suit number in hand. So you will write down suit number 345 of 2017. Then name of the parties, as I told you, are again equivalent to the plaint. Rather, it has to be copied and pasted from the plaint. Then center heading will be written statement on behalf of defendant. Then comes the body of WS. In the body of WS, you will reply each and every paragraph of the plaint. That is known as body of the plaint. All the paragraphs of the plaint are to be replied one by one. Then if you want to say something more, suppose you want to say that the suit of the plaintiff is barred by limitation, then that point will come in the additional pleas. Or if you want to raise any other plea, you have the liberty to write down any plea under the heading additional pleas. Then signatures of the defendant are required, and like plaint, verification is also required. Dear students, so far as the drafting of written statement is concerned, you should know some legal provisions regarding written statement. You see, whenever a case is filed in the court, the summons are issued and served upon the defendant. And he is required to appear in the court on the date mentioned in this summons. Normally, the defendant is required to file his written statement in the court within 30 days of service of summons or notice, or within such time as extended or granted by the court, and the maximum time of filing WS is 90 days from the date of service of the summons. This is the requirement of Order 8, Rule 1, CPC. So initial period I have highlighted in red is 30 days, and this 30 days period is extendable up to 90 days at the discretion of the court. It depends on the discretion of the court to extend the time for filing WS up to 90 days, but this period of 30 days or 90 days is to be counted from the date of service of the summon. That means when the defendant received the summon along with copy of the plaint. So this period of 30 days or 90 days is to be counted from the date of service of summon on the defendant. As I told you, that defendant is required to reply each and every paragraph of the plaint. The contents of these paragraphs which the defendant thinks are wrong or false, they must be specifically denied. Evasive or general denial is legally of no use. You are supposed to reply each and every paragraph in a categorical terms. Evasive denial or general denial is not enough. This is the mandate of Order 8, Rule 3 and 4 CPC. Then any allegation of the plaint which is not specifically denied, you should be very, very careful if you are a counsel for defendant, that if you have not specifically denied any paragraph of the plaint, then that paragraph shall be deemed to be admitted according to Order 8 Rule 5, and you are likely to lose the case since you have admitted the case of the plaintiff indirectly. And new facts. New facts must be specifically pleaded under Order 8 Rule 2 of CPC. Defendant must plead all those facts which go to show that suit is not maintainable or transaction is void or voidable. That means you are supposed to plead the factum of fraud, limitation, release, payment, performance, or facts showing illegality. This has to be done in accordance with Order 8, Rule 2, CPC. So you must take care while drafting the WS that each and every paragraph of the plaint is specifically designed. Now, dear students, you can plead set off also in your WS, especially in money suits. This is the mandate of Order 8 Rule 6. You can claim set off in your written statement. Set off means suppose A has filed a B. A has filed a suit against B for recovery of 1 lakh rupees. B also says that he has to recover from A sum of rupees 50,000. So in the WS, defendant can take this plea of set off, and this plea of set off taken in WS is equivalent to plaint. That means it is a cross suit, and the defendant is required to pay court fees on the amount so set off claimed by him, and the reply of set off shall be filed by the plaintiff as WS, and rules of WS will apply to the reply of such a plaintiff. And if plaintiff fails to file reply of counterclaim or set off, then court may pronounce judgment against the plaintiff in relation to the counterclaim. So if you are counsel for plaintiff, you should be careful that if defendant has raised a plea of set off or counterclaim in the WS, then as a counsel for plaintiff, you are required to reply that counterclaim or set off also. So this counterclaim by the defendant has to be pleaded specifically, but it has to be within the pecuniary limits of jurisdiction of the court. Suppose the Court of Civil Junior Division has capacity to decide cases up to 5 lakh rupees. Counterclaim cannot be made for more than limit of 5 lakh rupees. So dear students, you must be very, very careful that this counterclaim is equivalent to cross suit, and plaintiff will file his WS against the counterclaim. Now the next rule is that new grounds of defense be pleaded. If you want to take any other new plea, if they have arisen after institution of suit or presentation of WS, which contains a set off or counterclaim. So according to Order 8, Rule 8 of CPC, new grounds of defense are to be pleaded. Why I am emphasizing on these provisions, the reason is that you should be careful that no subsequent pleadings are allowed after filing WS except with the leave of the court or by way of amendment of the WS. This is the mandate of Order 8, Rule 9 of CPC, that you cannot change your pleadings unless you move an amendment application under Order 6, Rule 17 of CPC. And you should be careful as counsel for defendant that if no WS is filed by the defendant in time, the court may pronounce judgment against the defendant ex parte. If the WS is not filed in 30 days or extended time of 90 days, then court has power to pronounce ex parte judgment against the defendant, and a decree shall be drawn accordingly. Ex parte decree will be prepared after ex parte judgment according to Order 8, Rule 10 of CPC. Now, this WS is to be verified by the defendant, stating that contents of this WS are true and correct, and then WS is to be signed by the defendant. You will put the date on which it is signed, and his counsel for defendant will also sign this WS. And dear students, you should know that no court fees is levied on WS. On plaint you will have to pay court fees, but so far as WS is concerned, it does not attract court fees. But if you have claimed some amount set off, or you have counterclaim, or which amounts to a cross suit, then they attract court fees under Court Fees Act of 1870. Otherwise, no court fees is leviable on written statement. Now, here is a sample of WS before you. You will see how the WS is to be drafted. See, the name of the court will remain same as that of plaint. So our initial plaint was for specific performance of the contract for sale of a flat by the builder to a purchaser for a sum of ₹1 crore. And you must remember the facts that ₹10 lakh were paid in advance on 1/1/2017, and sale deed was to be executed within 6 months. I promise you that with the help of this single illustration, I'll explain you more than half of the syllabus relating to drafting and pleading. So name of the court, dear students, is same in the Court of Civil Judge Senior Division, Noida, Gautam Buddha Nagar, UP. You cannot change the name of the court in WS. Case number, you know, suit number. Now you know because you have received the copy of the plaint which contains the suit number allotted by the computer or given by the court staff. Name parties will remain same. A son of B, aged about 40 years, was our plaintiff. You cannot change the name of the plaintiff. Versus X son of Y. Again, the detail of the defendant is same. You have no right to change the name and address of the plaintiff and defendant. You have to mention this portion of the WS as it was written in the plaint. Then center heading will be a written statement on behalf of defendant. The defendant above named most respectfully submit as well. Now let us see what are the admissions and denials on behalf of the defendant. Para 1. That the contents of paragraph 1 of the plaint are not admitted. No such agreement to sell was ever executed between the parties. You see, defendant is a builder. Now he is replying that there was no agreement between the parties dated 1/1/2017. He has denied the agreement altogether. Then comes para 2, that the contents of para 2 of the plaint are not admitted. The defendant never received a check of ₹10 lakh from the plaintiff, and the same was never credited in his account. There is no question of execution of sale deed in favor of plaintiff after receipt of 90 lakh rupees. Detailed facts are mentioned in the additional fees. See how categorically the builder defendant is denying the facts. He says there was no agreement. He never received any money as advancement. Para 3, that the contents of paragraph 3 of the plaint are not admitted. No sale deed was agreed to be executed in 6 months. He is denying everything. Para 4, that the contents of paragraph 4 of the plaint are not admitted. The plaintiff never came to the residence of defendant on 2nd Sunday of April 2017. It was mentioned in the plaint that plaintiff went to the residence of defendant requesting him to execute the sale deed, but he said that I am not free on the Monday because he has an appointment with the doctor. Now the defendant says the defendant had no appointment with any doctor on the next Monday as alleged by the plaintiff. Para 5, that the contents of para 5 are not admitted. Since the defendant never received any sum from plaintiff, There is no question of returning double the amount to the plaintiff. Para 6, that the contents of para 6 of the plaint are not admitted. The plaintiff never called upon defendant on mobile phone. However, the defendant was surprised to receive 3 emails from the side of plaintiff, which appear to be the result of some legal brain in order to fabricate the false case. The defendant never gave any false promise to the plaintiff. See, he is indirectly admitting the receipt of 3 emails because he knows that this is a documentary proof and printout of the mail can be presented in the court. So builder is indirectly accepting that he received 3 emails and he was surprised to see those 3 emails. Para 7, that the contents of para 7 of the plaint are not admitted. No such notice was ever received by the defendant. The defendant had no knowledge about the presence of the plaintiff in the office of Sub-Registrar Noida on 20th June 2017. He is denying that plaintiff gave no notice to him for execution of sale deed on 20th June 2017. Likewise, he will deny next notice also. Para 8, that the contents of para 8 of the plaint are not admitted. No such notice was ever received by the defendant. The defendant has no knowledge about the presence of the plaintiff in the office of Sub-Registrar Noida on 30th June 2017. So second notice also the builder has denied. Para 9. Now third notice, he is also denying it. That the contents of para 9 of the plaint are not admitted. No such notice dated 1st July 2017 was ever received by the defendant. The defendant never demanded any sum of money from the plaintiff. The contrary facts are hereby denied. So he has denied all the 3 notices. Para 10, that the contents of para 10 of the plaintiff are not admitted. The plaintiff is trying to fabricate a false case against the defendant. The detailed facts are given in the additional pleas. Para 11, that the contents of para 11 of the plaint are not admitted. No cause of action ever arose in favor of plaintiff. Para 12, that the contents of paragraph 12 of the plaint are not admitted. This honorable court has no jurisdiction to decide this case. Para 13, that the contents of paragraph 13 of the plaint are not admitted. The plaintiff has undervalued the suit. Market value of the disputed property is 1 crore 25 lakh rupees. The court fees paid is also insufficient. Builder is saying that now the market value of the flat is 1 crore 25 lakh rupees and consequently plaintiff has paid court fees on 1 crore. So he says since the value is added plus by 25 lakh rupees, so court fees paid is insufficient. Para 14, that the contents of para 14 of plaint are not admitted. The suit of plaintiff is barred by limitation. See, defendant is replying all the paragraphs one by one. Para 15, that the contents of para 15 of the plaint are not admitted. However, its contents are legal. 16, plaintiff is not entitled to any of the reliefs claimed and his suit is liable to be dismissed with cost. See, the defendant has replied all the 16 paragraphs of the plaint one by one. Now comes the heading, rather center heading, additional pleas. Now what builder wants to say in addition to his reply to the plaint is contained in paragraph 17 under the heading additional pleas. Now let us see what additional pleas the builder is taking. Para 17. That the true facts are that defendant is an illiterate person. Now builder says that I am illiterate person. He can write only his name. The defendant had gone to the residence of plaintiff on 1/1/2017 for borrowing a sum of ₹10 lakh for the marriage of his daughter to be held in the month of March 2017. The plaintiff agreed to grant loan but requested that he will have to go to the court compound for writing a document in connection with the loan. The defendant went to the court compound along with plaintiff on 1/1/2017. Para 18. Plaintiff took him to the office of ABC advocate, where defendant was asked to sign certain printed and blank papers, on which the defendant signed, believing that papers are signed by him in connection with grant of loan. Para 19. Thereafter, the defendant was asked to accompany another office, where the defendant was again asked to sign on several documents. His thumb impressions were also taken in that office, and photographs of the defendant were also taken and affixed on those documents. Dear students, this is the procedure of Office of Sub-Registrar. When you go for registration of a agreement to sell, they will take your photographs, they will take your thumb impressions, and those photographs will be affixed on the agreement to sell. So you see, somehow indirectly, builder is trying to reach the case of plaintiff itself that there was an agreement, but he is saying that this agreement was not for sale of the flat, but he wanted to take a loan of 10 lakh rupees. Then he says in para 20 that after coming out of that office, the plaintiff gave him a sum of rupees 1 lakh only. Loan was for 10 lakh, but he says only 1 lakh rupees were given to him. And he refused to give remaining 9 lakh rupees on the pretext that he cannot lend anymore. Para 21, that the defendant was told that he will have to pay 2% rate of interest on the loaned amount. All right. Para 22, that defendant never agreed to sell his flat in favor of the plaintiff. See how categorically the builder is denying that he never agreed to sell his flat in favor of plaintiff. Para 23, that the defendant never executed any agreement to sell in favor of plaintiff on 1/1/2017. Para 24, that the document filed by the plaintiff in court is the result of fraud and misrepresentation. The plaintiff, in connivance of his counsel, got the document signed from the defendant, the contents of which are hereby denied. So he is denying the agreement dated 1/1/2017 altogether. Then the last para comes that the plaintiff is not entitled to any of the reliefs claimed, and his suit is liable to be dismissed with costs. Now the signature of defendant are required on this WS. Then comes verification. Verification means now the defendant will verify the contents of WS. As the plaintiff had verified all the paragraphs of the plaint, so now defendant will verify all the contents of his WS. So verification is to be drafted like this: I, X, son of Y, do hereby verify that the contents of paragraph 1 to 25 of this WS are true to the best of my knowledge and belief. You are supposed to write down the place also where the WS was verified. So you will write down verified at Noida on this first day of September 2017. This is the date of verification of the WS. Now again the signature of defendant are required, and since this WS is drafted by some advocate and it has to be presented in the court to advocate, so you will write down presented to XYZ advocate for the defendant, and the counsel for defendant is also required to sign this written statement. So dear students, this is how the written statement is to be drafted in accordance with the provisions of CPC. So thank you.